So today, you are at home in the fellowship of your Heavenly Father. And you and I are learning together the secret of what Jesus called his easy yoke. And that is how it's possible to grow to increasingly effortlessly do what Jesus would do if he were in your place, if he had your job. And we pursue that by arranging our life around the kinds of activities and practices that Jesus engaged in to remain constantly at home in the fellowship of his Father. And I want to tell you that that's possible for you today, whatever is going on in your circumstances and however difficult your life may be. Home is such a remarkable word. And we all have this longing for home. The Bible talks about that sometimes. We are aware of the fact that in this world, we're never quite fully home. And Jesus knew about that. It actually says about him, birds have their nests and foxes have their dens, but the Son of Man had no place to lay his head. He did not have that kind of physical home. He was at home, though, with his Father. And to a large extent, that brings us to prayer. We're told towards the end of his life, when he knew he was about to be crucified, the Gospel of Luke tells us about this. He goes to the Mount of Olives. There was a garden there, the Garden of Gethsemane. And Luke says he went there as was his custom. Somehow for Jesus to go that place. Often you might have a special little place where when you go there, you just feel, oh, I'm safe. I can be myself here. I'm home. This little cabana here has become for Nance and I in a difficult season, a kind of sanctuary. We come here at night and it is home. And it may be for you, there is a place like that. Maybe it's in your memory. Maybe you don't have a place like that. Maybe you find it very hard to be at home in your life or in your body. There is a kind of homesickness in all of us because ultimately we are made to find our home in God. And that brings us deeply into this business of prayer. What is prayer? Prayer is conversing, communicating with God, Dallas writes. When we pray, we talk to God aloud or within our thoughts. In the nature of the case, prayer almost always involves other disciplines and spiritual activities if it is to go well, especially study, meditation, and worship, often solitude, sometimes fasting as well. It would, of course, be a rather low-voltage spiritual life in which prayer was chiefly undertaken as a discipline, rather than as a way of co-laboring with God to accomplish good things and advance his kingdom purposes. And the idea here is, to the extent that prayer is a discipline, I'm using it to try to become different as a person. But if the only reason I talked to my wife was as a spiritual discipline, Nancy, I think as I talk to you, I will develop more patience, it would be something of an insult to her. Like the primary reason I talk to her is because I want to be with her and to know her and engage with her. And it's that way with God. Primarily, we talk with God in order to commune with him. But it also is a spiritual discipline. Indeed, the indirect effects of prayer, Dallas writes, upon the conduct of our life is so obvious and striking that they have been mistakenly treated at times for the only point of prayer. Even when we're praying about things other than our own spiritual needs and growth, the effect of conversing with God cannot fail to have a pervasive and spiritual strengthening effect on all aspects of our personality. That conversation, when it really is a conversation, when I really am trying to bring the real me before the real God, makes an indelible impression on our minds, and our consciousness of him remains vivid as we go on our way. Through prayer, I learn to the core of my body, I'm not alone. I'll say a word here about the why of prayer. And actually, I was just thinking about this. Tim, can you come here for 1 second? I'm going to use Tim as a prop. This is my friend, Tim Williams. He's my partner. And when we're in communication with people, there are 3 possibilities. One is I can be talking to Tim. That's what I'm doing right now because you're here, so I'm addressing you. The second one is I can talk with you, but where Tim is present and where I know Tim is present. So his presence will shape the things that I say. Or the third option, thank you, Tim, I'm all done with you now for this moment. The third option is I can talk with you in Tim's absence. And of course, we all know I might say things in Tim's absence that I would never say if Tim was present. Now, we might think about communication with God. I can talk with God directly, or I can talk together with you in the awareness of God's presence. There is a third option in our life that we do all the time, and that is I talk with you and I'm not aware of God's presence. I think of God as being absent. Here's what's striking about Jesus. For Jesus, that third option was never possible. Jesus lived in constant awareness of God's presence. And that's why, for example, when you look at his life, if Jesus is going to say heal someone, sometimes he would pray to God and ask God to bring healing. Sometimes he would just speak directly to that person because Jesus was so constantly aware of the presence of God that the line between praying and just talking was so thin that it was essentially erased. And every word that Jesus spoke was spoken in the conscious awareness of and trust in the presence of his Father. That's the goal of prayer. The goal of prayer is not to be a prayer warrior. It's not to be a really, really good prayer. It is to help me become so aware of and connected with and a friend of God that he is simply always with me. And every thought that I think and every word that I say is spoken in the presence of God, so that, as was the case for Jesus, that thin line between praying and just talking will eventually be kind of erased. Now, Dallas goes on to say this. Prayer will not be established in our lives, as it must be for us to flourish, unless we are practicing other disciplines such as solitude and fasting. In many churches, especially in the Protestant world, prayer and Bible study are held up as the activities that will make us spiritually rich. They're like the only two arrows in the quiver. But very few people actually succeed in attaining spiritual richness through them, and indeed often find them to be intolerably burdensome. The open secret of many Bible-believing churches is that a vanishingly small percentage of those talking about prayer and Bible reading are actually doing what they're talking about. They have not been shown how to change their life as a whole, permeating it with appropriate disciplines, like solitude, like celebration, so that prayer and Bible reading will be spiritually successful. And that's the journey that we are on together. So when it comes to how to pray, I will mention just one form today. And Richard Foster writes about this. He calls it simple prayer. And it is simply talking with God about whatever happens to be on my mind in the moment. Whatever that is, one of the examples he uses is a really striking, unusual, weird one. In the Old Testament, the prophet Elijah is going someplace and a group of children start taunting him for being bald, you old roundhead. And he actually calls up to heaven and a bear chases the kids away. Now, I don't know fully what sense to make of that. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff going on in that ancient culture that I'm not aware of. But it is a wonderful example of somebody just turning to God with a situation that's troubling them or that he doesn't like. So today, simple prayer. Just set an intention through the day. When something troubles me, when I'm confused, when I don't like something, when I'm grateful for something, I will try to talk to God about it. I will tell you one of the people that I learned about prayer from early in life before I was even aware of learning it. When I was in high school back in Rockford, Illinois, East High, we used to do musicals. We had a wonderful leader named Lindy Lundstrom. In my senior year, we did Fiddler on the Roof. And I was Topol. I was Tevye in that. The actor who played him in the movie, Topol, just passed away a couple weeks ago. It made me think again about that show. And if you've ever seen it, you know he's this character, this milkman, who just goes through the show talking with God. A lot of his time is complaining. One of the most famous songs in that show, If I Were a Rich Man. That's a prayer. Lord, you decreed I should be what I am, you who made the lion and the lamb. Would it spoil some vast eternal plan if I were a wealthy man? And Just to have the example. It was really funny because this is East High School, a bunch of skinny little Swedish kids trying to be these Jewish characters in the village of Anatevka. But there was something so earthy and wonderful about this milkman just talking to God and complaining to God and arguing with God and shaking his fist at God and asking God for help and guidance. And I'm still working on it. So that's the prayer today, the Tevye prayer, the fiddler prayer. If you want help with prayer, if you have a situation in your own life where you would like to have somebody praying for you, one of the things I'm really grateful for, I didn't plan on this, but in this journey together at Become New, we got a team of people who said, we would love to be committed to praying for the people who are part of our little community, our little tribe, our little Anatevka, our little fellowship of the withered hand where we can't, but God can. And so you can let us know. You can text us or contact us however you would like to. And there are folks who would find great joy in meaning and in talking together with God about whatever it is that troubles you, that's on your heart. And this happens in ways that are deeply meaningful, for which I'm very grateful. What an amazing gift prayer is. Every human being all over the planet, wherever their religion, very often even folks that are atheists, find themselves crying out to whoever is out there beyond all of us. That's what we do today. And then we'll have another one tomorrow. Prayer is the heart's true home. Welcome home.
Hey, I'm Tim. Thanks for joining us here at Become New. We hope that these videos help you to grow spiritually one day at a time. If you want to access our whole library of videos, or if you want to subscribe to the daily emails or text messages that go along with each video, head on over to becomenew.com and you can let us know there. We're also preparing some exclusive leadership content. So if you're interested in that, you can let us know at becomenew.com/leadership. And lastly, if you've got a prayer request, we would love to pray for you. You can let us know by texting it to 855-888-0444. See you next time.